where the new Treasurer Andrew Constance is about to deliver his first budget speech, and we'll go there as soon as that begins. You can see some of the members there, including the Transport Minister Gladys Berejiklian there, are filing into the chamber. And it's just past midday, so we can actually bring you some of the details of that budget now. The journalists who've been in the lockup this morning have been let out. Among them is the state political reporter Liz Foskier, and she's reporting that, as expected, the budget contains $61 billion in spending on new infrastructure projects over the forward estimates, and many of them have already been announced. Andrew Constance says it's more than has been spent before, rejecting opposition claims to the contrary. Among today's announcements are $400 million for a light rail service for Parramatta and $4.6 million in funding for a feasibility study for a new orbital road around Sydney. And you can just see there coming in and having a chat to the New South Wales Premier Mike Baird there, and Gladys Berejiklian too. The Family and Community Services budget has been boosted by $500 million to provide new casework assistance and technology to better address the needs of vulnerable children. Businesses will get a 5% reduction in their work cover premiums, and the threshold for the first home buyers grant has been lifted by $100,000. Now, it looks like the Parliament is just getting underway. We might have a listen in.
Welcome to all of our guests in the gallery today for the budget. Without further ado, I will call the Treasurer and Minister for Industrial Relations. Members will take their seats. Thank you. There will be no interjections during the delivery of the budget address, otherwise members will find themselves immediately ejected.
Madam Speaker, I move that the following cognate bills be now introduced. A bill for an act to appropriate out of the Consolidated Fund sums for the recurrent services and capital works and services of the Government for the year 2014-15. A bill for an act to appropriate amounts out of the Consolidated Fund for the year 2012-13 for the purpose of giving effect to certain budget variations required by the exigencies of Government. A bill for an act to appropriate out of the Consolidated Fund sums for the recurrent services and capital works and services of the legislature for the year 2014-15, and a bill for an act to make miscellaneous amendments to certain state revenue and other legislation in connection with the budget for the year 2014-15 and for other purposes.
The question is that these bills be now introduced. All of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I bring up the bills. Madam Speaker, I move that these bills be now read a second time. Madam Speaker, I can declare today to the people of this great state, New South Wales is back in the game. Yeah. Our budget is powerfully positioned. Net debt is down, expenses are under control, the AAA credit rating is maintained. New South Wales today is growing at 3 times the rate of Queensland and Victoria. Housing approvals are at the highest levels in over a decade. We have strong jobs growth, with around 114,000 created since 2011. We have an infrastructure build exceeding $61 billion. And our economy is strong in response to the government's agenda. In 3 years of hard work, the New South Wales Government has done the repair job on the foundation of our economy, the New South Wales budget. When we came to office, New South Wales lagged on all economic fronts. We were lagging on jobs growth, productivity, housing approvals and business confidence. We were facing years of deficits and high net debt, courtesy of the legacy left by those opposite. We took on the challenge of repairing the budget and rebuilding New South Wales. We took on the challenge in reining in spending and putting policies to work, such as the Jobs Action Plan and the Building the State housing strategy to grow the economy and restore New South Wales to number 1. In 3 short years, we've seen New South Wales rise again to become the powerhouse of the nation. Every dollar spent by this government is spent with purpose and respect for the hard-working men and women of our great state who steadfastly contribute to our social and economic strength. Regardless of where you live in New South Wales, nothing galls people more than wasteful spending by government and a reluctance to invest in the things that matter most to people and their community. It's why we have, and why we will continue to live within our means. Necessary budget repair means our fiscal position is better placed to fulfil the state's potential. Coupled with our commitment to the infrastructure that will rebuild New South Wales, we will strengthen our resolve to enshrine fiscal responsibility as part of every action we take. Maintaining the AAA credit rating is a choice, but it is a choice to which we are 100% committed. We now enter the new financial year with the confidence and the capacity to invest where we need to unleash the opportunities for improved productivity and economic growth. Madam Speaker, we are now in control of the budget. It's no longer in control of us. Yeah. This is a strong, sound and responsible budget. It is a budget designed to ultimately bring out the best in people and support individual opportunity. It's a clear demonstration of the importance of maintaining expense control. Whilst I remain Treasurer, there will be no backsliding on expenditure control that this government enshrined in the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2012. The challenge of the next decade is how the state budget can be harnessed to rebuild and advance New South Wales, to invest for its people, its businesses and its communities. Our vision is threefold: to unleash our global city's economic and social prosperity by delivering world-class transport and motor networks. In country New South Wales, we must unlock our freight pinch points and build new roads, dams and water pipelines so our farmers can respond to one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century, food security. Getting our produce and minerals to our ports with ease and at low cost so we can capitalise on our proximity to Asian markets and customers. And finally, and most importantly, we want to give every member of our community, whether they live in the regions or in the suburbs, the opportunity in life to reach their full potential. We are a government that builds. We're not building for election purposes, we're building for our future, for our children's future. Each year a Sydney commuter who goes to and from home is subject to an extra 185 hours of travel time per year due to congestion. Stranded on a train platform or sandwiched on a bus, sitting in a car on the M4, M5, M1 or on roads like Victoria, Parramatta, the Spit or the Princess Highway. An extra 185 hours equates to losing a full week every year stuck in traffic. Every year it's costing the people of New South Wales $5 billion. We could, as Labor did, put up the no vacancy sign, declare it all too hard and not build for our future. Alternatively, we can take action to deliver generations of benefits. The money to rebuild New South Wales must come from somewhere. Our best option is to recycle capital from our existing infrastructure. It doesn't place a debt burden on our children or a tax burden on enterprise. This enables the government to build more productive assets for the people of New South Wales. Any capital investment made by this government will adhere to the Fiscal Responsibility Act. All actions of this government through our budget must enhance and protect our AAA credit rating. It's what we've been doing in recent years and what we're going to continue to do. 3 years ago, we were told we faced a budget deficit of $2.4 billion in 14-15. The Liberals and Nationals chose to act and close this unacceptable deficit. At each and every step we took to repair the budget, we were opposed by New South Wales Labor. I can report today that the budget surplus for 2013-14 stands at almost $1 billion, with a deficit of $283 million forecast in 2014-15. For these 2 years, a $3.6 billion combined deficit was expected. We now have a combined surplus of around $705 million. Across the forward estimates, a further $4.5 billion in surpluses is projected. Most of this change in fortune comes from the improving New South Wales economy. Government policies to grow the state are beginning to bear fruit. This outcome exceeds forecast and is testament to the responsible fiscal management. Had it not been for reprofiling of Commonwealth funding for the Pacific Highway, the budget would be in surplus in 2014-15. And on a like-for-like basis, with the accounting rules which applied during Labor's years, the 13-14 and 14-15 results would have been $2.5 billion and $1.2 billion surpluses, respectively. Over the forward estimates, and again applying a like-for-like basis, the surpluses would have stood at collectively $8 billion. This clearly shows the incredible turnaround since we came to office. Labor's ill discipline allowed expenditure growth to outpace revenue growth, contributing enormously to their bad budget outcomes. By ensuring expenditure growth does not exceed long-term revenue growth, we have imposed proper budget discipline. The results of this are evident. The legacy of Labor's ill discipline was a net debt expected to exceed $20 billion this year. It now stands at $8.6 billion. We've more than halved net debt, giving us enormous capacity to invest in productive infrastructure. This year alone, we're investing $15 billion across metropolitan and regional New South Wales, but doing so in a responsible way. We're investing in capital commensurate with our fiscal position. Last month, the Liberal Nationals government finalised the Newcastle Port transaction. It's a textbook study in managing our assets. Grossing $1.75 billion, the transaction proceeds exceeded expectations. But this is not about money. It was a vision to rejuvenate our second-largest city by reinvesting hundreds of millions of dollars. Madam Speaker, we are not here to claim that we have accomplished all that we have set out to do. We're just getting started. Over the coming 4 years, $61.5 billion will be spent on productive infrastructure projects. These will modernise, decongest and renovate the state. This year we are delivering $863 million for the North West Rail Link, $103 million for South West Rail Link, $265 million for the CBD South East Light Rail, $398 million for the 33-kilometre West Connects motorway. And in the years ahead, $400 million for the North Connects project, a long-needed road to take trucks off suburban streets, and $3.9 billion for water and wastewater projects to service urban development across Sydney, the Illawarra and Blue Mountains. They're all projects that will get people moving. They'll accelerate New South Wales. Madam Speaker, today I can announce that we are funding feasibility studies for a Northern Beaches motorway tunnel, an extension of the F6 and route corridor for the M9, north, south and west. I'm also proud to announce a range of funding reservations from the New South Wales Government's Restart New South Wales Fund, including $400 million for Stage 1 of Parramatta Light Rail. This would bring our second-largest CBD into line with Sydney and Newcastle when it comes to light rail transformation. Projects that are funded from Restart New South Wales benefit from the proceeds of recent port transaction and windfall tax gains. In Parramatta, our decision to relocate close to 1,000 public servants, with more to come, will transform Western Sydney. I'm also pleased to announce additional amounts will be reserved in Restart New South Wales for the people of the Hunter, including $100 million for the Hunter Infrastructure Funds. Restart funds are also being reserved for $83 million for a South Western Sydney Housing Acceleration Fund, $177 million for a second Clarence River crossing at Grafton, $325 million for water security for the regions, $110 million for regional tourism infrastructure, and $200 million for a regional freight pinch point and safety program, which will target the Bells Line of Road, Golden Highway, Kings Highway and Go Cup Road. This has all been made possible by the hard and tireless work of Premier Baird when he was Treasurer. Premier Baird also protected windfall tax from being squandered by locking them into Restart. Madam Speaker, this budget is not just about numbers. It's about people. It's about the quality of life and aspirations of our citizens. It's about who we are. If you manage your budget, you can build and run services that help everyone with their day-to-day lives. For first home buyers, it goes without saying the Aussie aspiration of owning a home can be a nightmare. The property ladder is often out of reach. But today I can confirm we're attempting to provide a leg up. From July 1, first home buyers will be eligible for the first homeowners grant on new homes worth up to $750,000. It's a $100,000 increase to the threshold. But that's not our only strategy to make owning a home easier. In this budget, we're providing more than $60 million to local government to deliver essential infrastructure to support new housing development. It means more available land. It means more affordable housing. It means accelerating the New South Wales housing sector. New South Wales is doing everything possible to give confidence to foreign investment in our state. However, it is not appropriate that New South Wales taxpayers continue to subsidise foreign investors. For this reason, from July 1, the new homeowners grant will only benefit Australian citizens and permanent residents. Madam Speaker, the government will continue to extend its support to small business through red tape reduction and payroll tax relief under our Jobs Action Plan. I am pleased to also confirm today a work cover premium reduction of 5%. That is on top of the 12.5% premium reduction to business in last year's cycle. These reductions enable business to invest back into safer workplaces and at the same time generate employment. This is a government that has generated around 114,000 jobs since coming to office. We are also pleased to announce further incentives for business to grow by removing 3 business taxes from 1 July 2016. The taxes to be abolished include stamp duty on business mortgages, unlisted marketable securities and transfer duty on non-real business transfers. Madam Speaker, in this year's budget we are funding the largest rail and road projects in the nation's history and the most ambitious hospital rebuilding program ever seen. By moving more resources to our front line, while getting efficiencies from our back office and not further burdening taxpayers, we have delivered some of the best services in the world. In fact, in the past 3 years, our reforms have delivered 8,000 new frontline staff. That is more nurses, doctors, teachers and police in all communities right across New South Wales. There are 755 new teachers who have helped make our schools the envy of all the states. Today I confirm that in this year's budget, 309 new police officers will contribute to a total of 16,665 police officers across the state by August 2015. Madam Speaker, one of our greatest achievements of this government has been to change the culture in our health system, devolve decision-making to district board level and invest in hospital services at record levels. This year's budget will fund 1.29 million acute inpatient treatments and 2.77 million emergency department attendances. Since coming to office, we've employed 4,100 nurses. Today I can announce that 115 new clinical nurse educators and midwife educators and specialists will be funded. I can also confirm $1.3 billion in capital works for health. A centrepiece of this budget is the rebuilding of Westmead Hospital, one of the biggest hospitals in the Southern Hemisphere. We're also announcing redevelopments of St George, Sutherland, Gosford and a new hospital on a greenfield site, Byron Central Hospital. Continuing hospital construction works at Blacktown, Campbelltown, Hornsby, St George Emergency Department, Sutherland Hospital, Wagga Wagga, Dubbo, Tamworth, Bega, Parkes, Forbes, Port Macquarie, Lismore and Kempsey will also be funded. Further money is being invested to plan future capital works in other hospitals, including Wyong. We're also investing in a public-private partnership at the recently announced Northern Beaches Hospital. We're also investing in our future health workforce, and I'm pleased to confirm a $9 million grant to start construction of the new Campbelltown Hospital Clinical School in partnership with the University of Western Sydney. We're also allocating $9.3 million to commence redevelopments of John Hunter Children's Hospital paediatric and neonatal intensive care units as well. We're building new ambulance stations at Penrith, Liverpool, Bankstown, Blacktown and Cogra, and work will also continue at Bega, Kempsey and Albury. Other additional expenditure in 2014 budget includes $300 million to meet increased demand for hospital and emergency department services, $220 million to retain patient services previously funded by the Commonwealth under national partnership agreements, $92 million for medical research, $70 million for patient-centred initiatives and $29 million for new mental health initiatives. Madam Speaker, the commuters of New South Wales would have noticed a difference already in the performance of the state's rail network. They know that the magnitude of the task at hand cannot happen overnight. In 3 short years, the Transport Minister has started to clear the infrastructure backlog we inherited. And there's no better way to show that than with a simple little card we call the Opal. There have now been well over 2 million trips taken using the tap-on, tap-off smart card. 250,000 people now have them, and that will grow rapidly as more bus routes receive the technology in coming months. Light rail will follow next year. Funding of $157 million has been set aside in this year's budget to make it all happen. This year, we are also investing $265 million to commence construction of the high-capacity CBD South East Light Rail network, $103 million to finalise construction of the South West Rail Link, and $66 million for the upgrade of Wynyard Station. Madam Speaker, Sydney is choked with congestion, and we're going to tackle the problem. Highlights in this year's budget include $398 million to WestConnex and $208.5 million for Western Sydney roads. This year, in partnership with the Commonwealth, we are also investing $1.2 billion into the Pacific Highway, including $220 million to start construction between Woolgoolga and Ballina, $155 million to start construction of dual carriageways between Worrell Creek and Nambucca Heads, $135 million to start construction of the dual carriageway upgrade from the Oxley Highway to Kundabung, and $69.5 million to start work on the dual carriageway between Kundabung and Kempsey. We are committing $1.1 billion over 10 years to the Princes Highway. In this year's budget, there is $185 million in state funding to the Princes Highway, including $80 million to start building the Foxground and Berry Bypass, $5 million to start building the realignment at Terminal Creek, and $2 million to continue the planning of Dignams Creek realignment. Madam Speaker, local schools, local decisions and the smart and skilled reforms are among the proudest reforms of this government. This year's education budget is boosted by $612 million. Budget highlights include $230 million for national education reform, $119 million for early childhood, $95 million towards smart and skilled. We're also focused on apprentices. The Premier recently announced that in delivering our infrastructure program, we will ensure the creation of at least 1,000 new apprenticeships. Bidders for government infrastructure projects will need to meet minimum requirements for apprenticeship creation. Madam Speaker, this is a government that isn't interested in politics when it comes to delivering our environment. We're getting on with the job. This year we are committing $142 million to operate a modern and independent Environment Protection Authority, $103 million for the Environment Trust, $38.2 million for the Western Sydney Parklands Trust, $102 million for public parklands and gardens throughout the state, $39 million to reduce fire risks in national parks, $38 million to manage pest animals and weeds in national parks, and $26 million to help local councils to implement coastal and floodplain management plans. We're also delivering an increase of $78 million over 4 years for the Rural Fire Service to increase overall capacity and preparedness for whatever Mother Nature throws at us. Madam Speaker, you test the heart of a government when it comes to the treatment of the most vulnerable and those in need of support. This budget is not just about cement, not just about steel and timber. It's about our obligation to defend those in need. Every child is entitled to a safe home, and it pains me that right now we have too many children at risk of harm. Today, the New South Wales Government is announcing $500 million in new money to protect those children from abuse. Nothing sickens me more than those who abuse a child. Unfortunately, we still see horrendous situations where an innocent child suffers. This $500 million investment over 4 years will enable caseworkers to spend more time helping vulnerable children by freeing them from piles of paperwork. By giving them mobile technology, caseworkers no longer need to spend hours in the office. Instead, caseworkers can actually do their job, protecting children. Madam Speaker, when I was Minister for Disability Services, I met the families that politicians traditionally call vulnerable. But they aren't. They are some of the strongest, most inspiring and brilliant people. And that is why we are progressing with the rollout of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Whilst implementation is challenging, we must never lose sight of the end game, to empower people with disability to have choice and control of their lives. Today we are investing $587 million to deliver Ready Together, to assist people move to the NDIS, and $30 million towards new accommodation for people with disability in the Hunter residential centres. Madam Speaker, as we've discussed in past weeks, the federal budget ripped out more than $450 million over 4 years to assist the state give discounts for pensioners and seniors. I can confirm the New South Wales Government will fill the gap left to us by Canberra in 2014-15. In the coming year, no senior or pensioner already struggling with the cost of living will face an increase in ticket prices or bills because of a funding cut by Canberra. We will continue to demand that Canberra reinstate its contribution to assistance for the state's pensioners and seniors. Madam Speaker, there is no point pretending that the broken agreements of the federal budget won't hurt the people of New South Wales. However, the prudent decisions this government has taken over 3 years means we are able to cushion the blow of these cuts. The Commonwealth should suspend its cuts until a review of the federation can be completed. In the next 4 years alone, $2 billion will be wiped off our books, with national partnerships and agreements in health, education and pensioner and senior concessions cut off by Canberra. Beyond the forward estimates, the problem grows, leaving the states $80 billion worse off. Madam Speaker, in the years ahead, people will look back on this budget as one that started the process of rebuilding and transforming New South Wales. We now seek to implement the policy position of Bob Carr, Michael Egan, Morris Yemmer and Michael Costa to release the value in the electricity distribution network. This will clear Labor's infrastructure backlog and accelerate projects that will get the state moving. We know what is coming because we've seen it before. The unions and their parliamentary representatives will claim disasters of biblical proportions. But let us speak honestly. The facts don't support their case. New South Wales Labor has failed to explain how the lease of electricity network businesses would lead to increased prices. In fact, whilst network costs reduced in real terms in Victoria by 18%, over the same period network costs rose 122% in New South Wales, driving household bills through the roof. New South Wales Labor burdened electricity consumers with a 60% hike when they were last in office. Network costs are regulated by the Australian Energy Regulator, a Commonwealth body. The discipline of private sector investment, be it through the nation's superannuation funds or a publicly listed company, will help drive out union featherbedding. It will clean up inefficiencies in management and maintenance and prevent Labor governments from using the networks as a cash cow. This will deliver enormous benefits to consumers. Labor wanted to conduct this very transaction, but was tied down by union influence. So this is a clear choice. It's a choice between a government that wants to unlock the investment potential in this state and create individual opportunity, as opposed to those who want to stand still. It's a choice between a government that wants to build as opposed to those who want to destroy. It's a choice between accelerating New South Wales or putting it in reverse. Madam Speaker, 3 years into the privilege of governing, we have a lot of which to be proud. It's been a journey where we've grown the economy, created jobs, boosted housing supply and started to transform our roads and railways. It's a point in time that marks the change from repair to the rise of New South Wales. It also bears the fruits of hard yards we've done to control our expenses. We've got our house in order, and this budget will reinforce that ongoing commitment. When we came to government, New South Wales was last in almost every economic indicator. We were dragging, burdened, idle. If we'd not taken the urgent action that we did 3 years ago, the people of New South Wales would today be hearing about a $4 billion deficit. Labor was slowly boiling the finances of New South Wales, and we had nothing to show for it. Today, I can confidently declare we are now in control of the budget. The budget is not in control of us. We are rebuilding New South Wales.
Thank you. The question is question is that these bills be now read a second time. I call the Leader of the Opposition.
Be now adjourned.
The question is that this debate be now adjourned. All other opinions say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that you fix the resumption of this debate as an order of the day
Okay,
for
we'll
a
leave
future
that
date.
there for the moment. That was live from the New South Wales State Parliament. The State Treasurer Andrew Constance there handing down the budget. So it contains $61 billion in spending on new infrastructure projects over the forward estimates. Among today's announcements are $400 million for a light rail service for Parramatta, and $4.6 million in funding for a feasibility study for a new orbital road around Sydney. The Family and Community Services budget has been boosted by $500 million to provide new caseworker assistance and technology to better address the needs of vulnerable children. Businesses will get a 5% reduction in their work cover premiums, and the threshold for the first home buyers grant has been lifted by $100,000. The budget will dip into deficit this coming financial year to the tune of $283 million before returning to surpluses over the remainder of the forward estimates. Total tax revenue over the period is expected to grow by 5% per annum. So that's a wrap of the New South Wales budget, and we'll go into a bit more detail on that through the afternoon here on ABC News 24. And just as Andrew Constance was making that address to the New South Wales Parliament, there's been some other news that's just come through in the last 10 minutes or so, and this is to do with the Wild Rivers legislation covering rivers on some of the rivers on Cape York Peninsula. A federal court judge in Brisbane has ruled invalid the former Beattie Labor government's Wild Rivers declarations over 3 systems in Cape York in far north Queensland. The declarations cover Stewart Basin, the Archer and the Lockhart rivers, and restricted development on the land. And the declarations had restricted development on the land there. The Cape York Land Council launched the action 4 years ago on behalf of the Wick Indigenous people and other traditional owners. They'd accused the previous state government of not considering public submissions when declaring the 3 systems as wild river areas back in 2009. So, yeah, a significant decision there in terms of Aboriginal land rights and the Wild Rivers legislation there in North Queensland. That's just come through in the last half hour or so from Queensland, from the federal court there. The federal court judge ruling invalid that Wild Rivers declarations over 3 systems on Cape York Peninsula. The Immigration Minister, Scott Morrison, has reacted angrily to legal action over the sinking of an asylum seeker boat off Christmas Island 4 years ago. 50 people died in the tragedy, and lawyers for some of the families are suing the government for not acting quickly enough to save them. But Mr Morrison has defended the bravery of Border Protection staff on that day, and he says the legal claim is shameful and offensive.
Frankly, I think this is a shameful and offensive claim to be making. Sure, people have the right to bring cases to court. We're a free country, but they also have to be accountable for the claims that they bring. The men and women who served that day showed a level of bravery, self-sacrifice, that we have seen only on rare occasions. And the response of the people of Christmas Island, our fellow Australians there, was also extraordinary. And for this claim to be brought in this way today, it just beggars belief. I mean, this is like someone who was saved from a fire suing the fireman. It's like someone who has been saved by an ambulance officer at the scene of an accident being sued for saving the person's life. It's like someone who was held hostage and being saved by police and suing the police. I mean, this is really, I think, a very shameful and offensive claim to be bringing. And again, I just want to give my total support to the men and women of the Australian Customs and Border Protection Service and the Australian Navy, whose reputation, whose character and whose conduct on that day is unimpeachable.
Scott Morrison there. The trial of Australian journalist Peter Grester is nearing its end, with the verdict to be delivered next week. Mr Grester and 2 of his Al Jazeera colleagues are accused of broadcasting false news and aiding the banned Muslim Brotherhood. Prosecutors are demanding a jail sentence of at least 15 years. His family held a media conference in Brisbane earlier today.
We've still got to have faith in the Egyptian legal system, that we've been continually backed, or it's been explained